My name is Tylluan. I'm a solitary pagan witch, I'm an author, and the founder of the Wolf and Howl Press. And as you can hear, Mabel is on the move again. What is making the noise, actually, is that she's got a new bed, and it's rather noisy. So she's dancing around all over it, but she's gone quiet now, so we'll make the most of this. Okay, today's little chat is about binding spells. Now, firstly, what is a binding spell? Why would we do it? How do we do it? Is it worth doing? Binding spells traditionally were done to stop someone from doing something. We actually have a phrase in English which reminds us of this, the idea of being bound over to keep the peace. That there was like a symbolic tying of a knot that symbolised, look, you are going to be bound over, you are not going to disturb the peace anymore. So if someone is bound over, that's where it probably comes from. Binding spells, though, are very ancient. We know they were used with things like catadesmoi and defixio, which were like cursing dolls. In catadesmoi was in Greece, defixio was in the Roman Empire. They were dolls which were made of all sorts of different things, and the idea was that they were prevented from doing things. They were bound. Well, they could be, like a slave could be bound, if you like, to stop them running away. Likewise, a partner, that could be a type of magic they would have done to have stopped them. But another very popular one was what was called a forensic curse, where they actually bound people and symbolically covered the mouth in the figure in order to stop them from speaking and testifying in legal trials. Now, only they could have thought of that in the classical world. Yes, they had this idea that if they made these dolls and they covered up the mouth, then the person it represented would get into court and they'd be asked, now tell me, what did you see on the night of the 25th? And they'd be there going, I don't know whether it ever worked. Some of their curses were pretty nasty, so I don't know. But that's what that kind of curse is. Nowadays, most people tend to talk about a binding spell to try and stop someone doing something. And yes, there are times when you really do need to stop someone from stalking you or something like that. But you should never really resort to magic unless you're also doing things like keeping a diary of what's happening, notifying the police, getting evidence when and where you can, stuff like that. It is important. It's vital. It's hard enough to get people to take you seriously at the best of times. So anything like that is important. Yes, a binding spell may well help, but don't rely on it totally, because all magic requires that we do our very best to support it out here in the real world. So that's one thing. The other feeling I have with binding spells, where I'm not terribly comfortable with them myself, and it's a personal thing, is that I don't like to bind something that might bring it closer to me. If you bind something, where are you going to put it? You can't just bind it and leave it out in the open, even symbolically, because the chances are that some well-meaning person will come along and unbind them. Oh, look, somebody down there is bound. Oh, quick, let's do an unbinding spell. And then you're back to square one. So in order to keep them off the radar, you have to keep them fairly close to you where you can keep an eye on it. Now, personally, if I have an issue with somebody, I don't really want them that close. I know in the Godfather film, Don Corleone said, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. But sometimes it is nice to have them as far from you as possible. So what I would say is, rather than leaping to a binding spell straight away, I would recommend protective and cleansing work. In other words, cleanse your space, your immediate space, and that can be your person. That can be where you spend a lot of time or where you feel is being affected. It can be your workplace, it can be your desk, it can be your bed, it can be your car, your bike, anything. But make sure you do cleanse it, because you're trying to get rid of anything negative that has landed on it, if you like. Cleansing is a good habit to get into anyway. I mean, if you looked around my kitchen with a torch and a magnifying glass, you would be astonished how much dust is here, and dust is a terror for picking up various energies. Now, there are times when it doesn't matter, and there are times when you can feel that the energy out here becomes a bit sluggish, in which case we have to do some fairly strenuous cleansing of the, if not all of it, of the parts where we feel it's been affected. So I would say get into the habit of cleansing, and you cleanse with, you can cleanse with incense. If it's just one room, well, light a charcoal block and use cleansing herbs such as lavender. Anything that smells clean will probably do a good cleansing job. You burn that on the charcoal block because that will fill the air and it will cleanse it. You can use a joss stick and take that round with you. Just be careful though, because these things are a light and fire is not something to play with. You can use a candle. If you burn a candle, you know, do it the respect of realising this thing can burn your house down. Also, it was always considered very unlucky to allow a candle to burn down and burn out on its own. There was a tradition that it should always have someone in the room with it because it felt lonely. And I think that's rather lovely, and it's a very good way of making sure you never leave a burning candle unattended. Not just the practical safety issues, but also the magical ones. And what else can we use? Well, my favourite has always been bells. And ringing a bell, believe you me, a bit of energetic ringing wherever the problem happens to be, cleanses beautifully. Very simple, very quick. And you can actually feel the air start to tingle with it. It's lovely. If you use large bells, well, you've got less ringing to do. You know, we have some very large bells in this house, and you just ring them once or twice and it will do the entire house. That was Daisy. If you have small little hand bells, well, you've got to be prepared to put some work in. But that would be my main thing, to start off with cleansing, magical cleansing, and protective work, whatever protective work you like. You know, some people used to make a liquid out of rowan berries, anything red, but rowan in particular, and you could brush it along the windowsills, anywhere that was open, where people could get in, where evil could get in. So that years ago would be your hearth, because they could come down the chimney, your windows and your doorstep. But I mean, you can do it lots of ways. You could put a line of bright red battery-operated LED lights on your window. It would do the same function. It would look very pretty. It would be a good reminder, look, here's my barrier. White ones would be fine. Red is traditional for protective work. There is an awful lot you can do if you really put your mind to it. And thorns are another. If you have a thorny plant growing outside your door, that's always a good one. So when you see the roses growing round the cottage door, they're not just there to look pretty. They're there because they have thorns. They will catch any evil that tries to go into the home. And of course, in the autumn, they have these lovely red berries, the red rose hips, which again are protective. I think that's rather nice too. But as I say, I would try and avoid binding as much as you can, simply because there is a tendency to need to keep it near you, to keep the work near you, just to avoid somebody undoing what you've done. And I don't want to keep things I don't like near me. I'd rather put them as far away from me as possible. Just my thoughts on the matter. It's only ever my opinion. That's what I've learned. That's what I'm sharing. But I hope it's hopeful, and thank you very much for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Goodbye.